how to be successful without letting your ambition get the best of you. How to be successful without letting your ambition get the best of you. That's what we're going to talk about today. But, first, please send your validation my way so that I can inhale it into my nostrils and down into the depths of my soul. Send said validation by subscribing to the YouTube channel. Hit the little notification bell. That notification bell is very important because you can get brand new videos the moment they come out. All other platforms, please like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends. Let the streets know. Funny thing about the way that I start my videos, and I whiff and I ask for all of your validation and I do it tongue in cheek. But to be very honest with you, to kind of peel back the layers of my own life, validation is a big theme for me. And while on the one hand, I do create from a place of genuine joy for creative expression, I love doing this, I'm passionate about doing this, there is a side of me that is driven by validation. There's a side of me that is driven by the need of approval from other people. You know, I've spent a lot of time in my life kind of with a chip on my shoulder. And I bring up this video because I've been getting an interesting piece of feedback lately just from, colleagues, people close to me, people that I work with, things like that. They say, Ayo, on the one hand, you have a very positive, motivated, driven energy that's infectious, that inspires people, that really has a lot of good to add to the world. But they can also notice that I have a darkness to me. I have, on the one hand, my eyes are very open, awake, and aware, but you can see a little bit of pain in there too. So there's kind of that duality of the inspiration and the duality of kind of the pain and chip on my shoulder and need for validation. And, that's kind of the yin and yang of who I am. And I think we all have a little bit of that. And the reason I'm bringing this up is to make sure that you never look at me as some infallible person who has the answers to everything. I never want to come across as an all-knowing guru. I want to show you the areas that I'm struggling with so that you know it's okay to be a normal human being. And B, I want to make sure that I'm always giving you the fullest picture when it comes to advice possible. So I want to make sure that you know that everything has a trade-off. Everything comes with an opportunity cost. And becoming successful, on the one hand, there's many great things about becoming successful, but then there are also many trade-offs, right? So let's talk about the idea of ambition. I actually just wrote a blog post that talked about the idea of using self-pity to your advantage. So a lot of us, we suffer from self-pity. There's things we don't like about ourselves. There's things we don't like about our situation. There's things we wish we could change. There's goals that we want to go after that we have not been able to do yet. And so most of us end up wallowing in that self-pity. But in this post, I talked about the idea of using self-pity to your advantage. I talked about the idea that, maybe you feel self-pity because your life objectively sucks. And so you've probably noticed the theme in many of my videos that I often talk about using the ideas of dissatisfaction and desperation to push yourself to get the outcomes that you want. And on the one hand, this does help you get a lot of the benefits that you want in your life. And it does make you feel content in certain aspects. So for me, when I was broke, I was depressed. It was causing me a lot of stress to be broke. So I made my mind up that I was going to make money. And making money did alleviate the stress and the identity issues related to money. Same thing with getting in shape. If you actually noticed the first video of the channel, I'm probably about 40 to 50 pounds heavier than I am right now. Like, go look at them and compare them side by side and you'll see. So I was feeling unhappy about that. So then I got in better shape. I dropped the weight. I'm wearing size 32 jeans, which I haven't worn since the age 16, and I feel great about that. So there is something to be said about checking off some of the boxes in your life so that you feel better about them. And it's kind of like paradoxical because on the one hand, the people who tell you to be content with what you have, Eastern philosophy, the self-care movement, body positivity, all of these things, they're actually correct. They're actually the correct way to go about it. You actually probably should not try to work on yourself from the outside in. It's most optimal to work on yourself from the inside out. It is actually the most efficient route to just decide to be happy. You can easily, well, not easily, what I mean is to say quickly decide to be happy. So, like, even if you decide to change at some point and you muster up a lot of energy to get to that point, that change, it happens right away. You didn't need to do all of that, right? But why do I then suggest going from the outside in? Going from using your self-pity to your advantage, looking at the circumstances in your life and trying to change those to kind of change some of your inner feelings. I do this because, as we all know, it's very hard to just conjure up these good positive feelings when your life, at least in your perception, sucks. Like, it's hard to just, have that Eastern philosophy mentality where you could live in a shack and be 500 pounds and have no money to your name and feel happy. Like, it seems easier to make $10 million than it is to reach the level of contentment that a Buddhist monk is able to do that has no possessions, right? So I often say, go and change some of your circumstances in your life and you'll feel better. And you will develop a sense of pride about those things. But then again, you can let this can fester and become a loop where you create other demons that are built from your ambition. And, those are some of the things that I'm going through right now. And it's really interesting to hear people who've interacted with me and who've gotten to know me on a deeper level kind of see that I have a little bit of this dark, almost like hurting energy that I'm, using success to try to fill certain voids in my life. And I'm trying to figure out how to do that, make that balance, right? There's a book called Relentless by Tim Grover, and he talks about the fact that a lot of elite level athletes who are driven by success, they have a very dark energy to them. They have a dark side. They have this kind of never-ending hunger for the next task, and they almost have like a sociopathic, psychopathic level of motivation to where they're never satisfied with anything. He worked with Kobe Bryant. He worked with Michael Jordan, Dwayne Wade. He worked with a lot of successful NBA players. You look at people like Tom Brady, who, seemingly nothing's ever enough for the guy. Like, how many Super Bowls do you want, right? So there are certain people, and I think I might, not that I'm comparing myself to elite level athletes, definitely not, but I do have that sense in my own life where like nothing's never enough for me, where I want to keep going and pushing. And while that can get you to certain heights, it's like you have to be happy at the same time. It's like you want to be successful, and then you want to be happy at the same time, right? And another reason why I suggest that people kind of go and reach their goals first, it's better to go and achieve your goals only to find out that they weren't really what you thought they'd be than it is to have to wonder what if. Because I'm making a lot of money right now, because I'm in good shape, because I've solved a lot of kind of logistical problems in my life, now I actually have the time to be meditative. I have the time to look and focus on my happiness and not let ambition get the best of me. When I was broke, I couldn't do that. When I was broke, when my job was stressing me out, when things were falling apart around me, when I was depressed, when I was addicted, I didn't have time to be meditative about my life, right? I didn't have time to do that. So I used self-pity to my advantage. I had a massive chip on my shoulder. I still have a massive chip on my shoulder. And if you look at a lot of successful people, they are driven by that chip on their shoulder. They're driven by that need for everyone to recognize how good they are, how talented they are. And that chip on your shoulder can get you very far. But at some point, if you kind of want to be a whole person, you have to let go of that chip on your shoulder. And then, it's funny, all of the things that you know to be true and that you could adopt right now, they're kind of things that you will come to understand as you become more successful. You're like, oh, I didn't have to do all of this to feel good about myself. I didn't have to make all this money and build this audience to feel okay with being Io. Like, you are good enough. It's like, on the one hand, I kind of laugh and scoff at like kind of these airy fairy woo woo like spiritual gurus, but they're actually right. Like, you could just feel good about yourself right now. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what you do for a living. It doesn't matter who you have in your life or don't have in your life. Like, none of these things inherently matter at all. But then simultaneously, they matter at the same time. They extremely matter. So all successful, or all things related to success, or just life in general, important truths, they all have a very paradoxical nature to them. There's no binary perfect answer to anything. And the more that you search for binary answers, you're going to get further away. So at least like in this process that I'm talking about, where you do kind of want to make your life better, you do have a chip on your shoulder, you are pushing, like that'll teach you one thing. Then you'll go to another stage where you'll realize that success isn't all it's cracked up to be. You'll work on being happy. You'll work on being content with what you have in the moment. And then you'll revert back and understand that kind of the achievement of goals is also a really good spiritual process. Like you get a lot of spiritual milestones in trying to achieve difficult tasks. And there's some things you won't understand about life until you achieve those tasks. So it's all this mess, and you're just trying to go through and kind of learn new things and update your software, never being perfect, but always aiming to get a full understanding at life. Why do you think there are new philosophers, even though philosophy has been covered to every extent from so many angles? It's because no one can agree. There is no perfect answer to life. There is no perfect self-improvement recipe. You got to go out there and find out for yourself. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't care about a lot of money. I'm like, oh, no, go find out for yourself first. Because a lot of people who say they don't want a lot of money, they're lying. And they're kind of using that as the coping mechanism because they don't think they can get the money. I'm like, no, go get the money. Go get the money first and then decide whether or not you like it. Maybe you could, throw away all your money and renounce your possessions. The funny thing is, all those celebrities who tell you that money isn't everything, that fame isn't everything, 100% of them keep their money. 0% of them get rid of it. So life combines both things. Life is about you live in the material world. It's almost impossible unless you become a Buddhist monk to remove yourself from the material world. And then you have the spiritual world. You have the happiness world. You have the notion that you could be happy right now without anything having to happen. And you kind of have to wrestle with those all at once and kind of create that good ratio. And you just try to go through your life and get better. Like these days, I'm trying more to live in the moment. I'm trying more to just be happy with what I have. I'm trying to work from a place of joy more than a place of needing outcomes to happen, right? So there's actually a really good book on this, Power vs. Force by Dr. David Hawkins. And he talks about the fact that, there's two different ways to kind of get success, influence, power, motivation. So there's the idea of force, and force is where like you're trying and you're pushing and you're fighting and itching and scratching and clawing to be successful, right? So in a lot of ways, I used force to become successful, and a lot of what I'm trying to do now is to keep myself from being overly driven by force. Because another way to get the things you want in your life is through the idea of power. So when you come from a place of power, you don't have anything to prove. You're not necessarily pushing to be successful. You are content with yourself, and you are able to create yourself or to create from that expressive nature, and it's just like emanating from you. So I'm trying to focus on being happy and content and still doing things like this, still helping people, but letting it emanate, letting some of that energy come out in the lighter form, right? And in the book, he also talks about like there's different levels of energy. There's different levels of kind of mind states that people go through, and some of the lower level mind states are apathy. So a lot of people are down in this apathetic stage where they're just kind of dead inside and they're going through the motions. And the next step up from that is anger and frustration, and then it moves up to like courage and pride, and eventually like the higher levels is like love, rationality, really not needing anything but having an understanding of things. But it's hard to jump from apathy to love and full transparency of your feelings, right? So that's why I kind of advise people is like, you're at apathy. I was at apathy. So I use agitation and frustration and anger, then courage and pride and confidence. And now I'm trying to get up to love. And I'm trying to help bring people up through that process and understand that like you don't need anything to happen, and you just kind of can make things happen. So you'll go through that process yourself. And you can live in both worlds at the same time. There are people who drive fancy cars because they like fancy cars, but they're not attached to their cars at all. They just like cars. Then there are some people who drive fancy cars because they need other people to see the logo on their car. There's some people who are stylish and they just like rocking cool clothes. There are other people who wear cool clothes because they feel the need to be cool. There are people who make money because they want to have resources so that they can have freedom over their time, but they don't really care about money per se. There are people who are slaves to money and will ruin their lives making money in the process. So like there's a duality to all of this. And the goal, which I'm striving for, which a lot of people will strive for, but maybe never get close to, is you kind of want to have like 100% going for your goals, 100% like bringing your best self to the world, but then 0% like wanting anything to happen. 0% attachment to anything that happens, but going as hard as you can at the same time. And that's where I'm trying to get to. And I am going to start trying to focus on incorporating some of that lighter energy into my message. Like my book, Real Help is a book that I would consider a brutally honest guide to self-improvement. It actually is really a book that's going to push you, that's going to help you have tough conversations with yourself and kind of dig you out of apathy, get you to rise above, and then start getting the things in your life sorted so that you can kind of ascend to the higher levels. And it's interesting, kind of in the process of this book, really pushing myself to get this message out. And really, I've had comments on the book that the book is heavy-handed. I had a comment from someone that said the book is abrasively down to earth. I've had, many people comment things along the lines of, you know what, Ayo? Some of the truths you tell in your book, in your writing, they make me want to fight you, but I'm glad that you put them out there. So there is something to be said about confronting your life when it's not going the way you want to, so that you can get up and even have the ability to get to love, right? Most of us are so low in apathy and going through the Groundhog Day existence, running the hamster wheel, running the rat race, that the idea of love is like too far away. So I still, given everything I've already told you, given the struggles that I still have at this level, I still would prefer to be at this level trying to find contentment than being broke, out of shape, depressed, drinking drugs and alcohol, trying to get to that state. So go through the evolution, but ultimately you do want to have it in the back of your mind that you don't need any of this to happen to be successful. So there's my paradoxical video for the day. I hope it leaves you a little bit almost confused. Think about it, journal about it. Let that marinate in your mind. Be alone with yourself and kind of think about the whole picture of you, your light and your dark, your ambition and your contentment, your push and your pull, your power and your force. And we will continue this journey together on the next video.